Welcome back to the Star Wars Universe Podcast. Today we're talking about The Mandalorian, Season 1, Episode 6, The Prisoner. We're talking about the Mandalorian's old friends and how well they get along. We're talking about robots and Yodas and how they get along. And we're talking about X-Wings that blow things up just because an alarm goes off with absolutely no information whatsoever. All this right after an ad that we have no control over. I am Matthew, your host. Joining me, as always, for The Mandalorian is Jeff Randall. Jeff, how are we doing today?
Fantastic, sir. Really excited to get back into the Star Wars stuff after you moved.
Yeah, I was very rude. I moved. It meant we had to take a couple of weeks off to get everything back in order. Yeah, it was. I realized it'd been a while since I watched these episodes. Been a while since I watched these episodes, so I was excited to dive back in. And this is I'm not sure if this is my favorite episode or if it's just my favorite of these kind of middle bottle episodes, because it's very much a bottle episode.
Oh yeah,
but
absolutely.
Wow, is it a good one?
Yeah, this is I would say this is my number 2 of the self-contained episode in a bottle kind of things. Only because Cara Dune is bae, and that one will always be number 1.
That's fair. For those who don't remember, let me give a quick summary. The Mandalorian contacts his former partner, Ran Malak, for work. Ran is always going to be Bobby Elvis to anybody who was a Sons of Anarchy fan like I am.
Absolutely.
Ran welcomes him to a space station and informs the Mandalorian that he needs his ship for a 5-man job. He is joined by ex-Imperial sharpshooter Mayfield, Devornian strongman Berg, droid pilot Q90, and Twi'lek knife expert Xian for a mission to rescue Xian's brother Quinn, a prisoner of the New Republic. After infiltrating the prison ship, they fight through security droids, make it to the control room, where the ship's security chief triggers a security beacon before being killed by Xian. The crew rescues Quinn, but double-crosses the Mandalorian. He escapes and defeats every crew member, then captures Kin. Q90 finds the child after deciphering the archive transmission from Greef Karga, but is shot by the Mandalorian before he can harm him. The Mandalorian delivers Quinn to Ran and departs with his payment. Ran immediately moves to launch a fighter to kill the Mandalorian, but discovers the New Republic beacon has been placed on Kin, leading a trio of X-Wings to Rand Station where they attack. In the final scene, Mayfield, Berg, and Xian are revealed to be locked in a cell on the prison transport, having been spared by the Mandalorian.
That's comprehensive.
That's I keep bouncing around. Wikipedia seems to give a pretty good summaries. So what do you like about this episode?
I like that we're getting more of the I don't want to say the standard Western characterizations, but definitely more of the the broad scope of your Western characterizations that you see a lot. You get the ex-military crazy guy, the crazy knife person, the super strong silent type, strong guy.
The old crew that we're not sure if we're still friends or enemies with.
Yeah. You get the guy that's like, oh, I don't do missions anymore, but we go way back.
Yeah.
It's got all of the pieces there of that classic heist story. And, if we were D&D players, this would be a one-shot that he comes into that is absolutely just you come in for the week, you set your character sheet down, I'm the Mandalorian, let's play, good game, everybody, bye. See you next week.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's weird. I like tropes, but I don't like cliches. I like when they... And I think what I mean is I like when they take a common story, but then put their own spin on it in some ways. And that I can't just predict every moment that's going to happen. I definitely felt that way with this episode. It was clearly a trope. When the double cross comes, it's not a huge surprise by any means. But it was fun. They really played with the trope in some good ways. They gave us some interesting characters. I was going to say that the X-Wing response in that is kind of ridiculous and stupid.
It's
but
so ridiculous.
Often a trope in those is that the Federales will come, just when you need them in a completely illogical way. So maybe that's also playing into a Western trope. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's the Marshal showed up.
Yeah, but yeah, it was a little bit of a heist move. It was a little bit of a heist, which is always fun. It was a little bit of a who can trust who. I liked the Mayfield character quite a lot because it, he struck me as he's very defensive about having been Imperial in the past, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, I just liked it all.
And then the characters that were the actors that we got in these characters do such a great job. I mean, we had Nymphadora Tonks, we had Bill Burr, we had your Bobby Elvis friend.
Yep.
We had so many.
Whose name is actually Mark Boone Jr.
No, it's
Great
not.
actor.
It's Bobby Elvis.
Okay, that's fair.
But yeah, we had so many great actors that came in for these just teensy tiny parts. I think Clancy Brown was in there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he might have been. It was a real ensemble force. Yeah, and I just like also seeing some more of the different races that are hanging around. Seeing the Twi'leks, the brother-sister thing was interesting. I did think Quinn's character, the overly flirtatious, uses her sexuality as a weapon character is most definitely a trope in these things.
Yeah.
Hers was a little over the top. But I definitely, I thought she was a fun character. Yeah, I will also say I like this because the fight scenes all felt earned. And all felt like both they were great character studies or they were just incredibly badass.
Right.
And I'm normally not a fight scene guy, but that scene in the strobe light where the Mandalorian is just kind of sneaking up on Mayfield. Oh, that was terrifying. That was such a good scene.
He's a real scary guy when he gets in his element, and especially when he just kind of is establishing that dominance that has to happen on the team, mm-hmm. when all the droids are walking up and he's just like, I got this. I'll take out the whole squad by myself. It's like, okay, yeah, this is the guy. This is the Mandalorian that I have been waiting to see. Like, this is the guy whose religion is weapons.
And I thought it was fun because we've talked a lot about the role that sort of news versus myth and story plays in this world. And I liked seeing that all these people had this was probably the first Mandalorian they've seen. I was going to say seen in the flesh, but seen in the metal, because they never see any flesh. And so I liked the idea that they had all heard these rumors about Mandalorians, and some of them had, kind of positive connotations, and some of them were just terrified of them, or just that kind of oh, I've heard you're pretty badass. I don't think you're so bad. That kind of thing. It was a fun bit of world building to see.
Yeah, it was kind of, it felt a lot like the way that every brigand in the Witcher series wants to screw with Witchers in some way. How they're like, I've never played with a Witcher before. It's like, okay, yeah, that's why you're still alive.
Yeah, well, because I think that's the thing is talk about a great drinking story. If you can say you took down a Witcher, you took down a Mandalorian, you're drinking for free the rest of your life. And so I can see it's that kind of machismo, I got to be the one to say I can do this.
And none have.
Yeah. It's so true. And I found I liked, Berg, I thought was a really fun character, especially because he's portrayed as, the kind of big, strong man who's also dumb as a box of rocks.
Yeah.
But he has some kind of animal cunning and intelligence. And the humor that they played with him around. I am once again reminded that there really needs to be an OSHA in the Star Wars universe who puts on some kind of safety precautions around doors. Because I don't know how you don't have hundreds of people being accidentally crushed by doors. But that was a wonderful call back to the first episode when, the Mandalorian tries to drop a door on him. Berg catches it and kind of does a grin. And so Mandalorian just squeezes him from two doors coming side to side.
Yeah. He's really just lucky that door the double doors, so to speak, existed
Right.
in there instead of just being the one, because that could have ended poorly.
Yeah, that would have... like I said, I'm not quite sure I understand starship design on those things.
Nah.
Also, is it just me or did it seem like for a prison ship, the security was remarkably low?
Well, it was mostly droids. This is how I'm headcanoning this. I learned from the best with Matthew Carroll. It's mostly droids. They don't really expect anybody to be able to get out, because they don't open from the inside, obviously, and you can't reach through. So they're not expecting people to be able to get out of the cells. Right. And then there's a person there to determine whether or not to use a beacon. And if they use the beacon, then the X-Wings just show up and destroy it. And then all the prisoners are dead.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. That was perhaps the one part of the... I watched it the first time through, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And then I watched it a second time through, okay, well, let me pay more attention this time and see if I can find the details. Nope.
Nope. Still bad.
So let's see. I understand
really
here.
Questionable.
We have this beacon where if it's ever sent off, the Republic will send X-Wings to just utterly no questions asked come in and destroy everything. Which, first of all, we're executing prisoners, which generally kind of frowned upon in most civilized societies, especially if it's the buddies of one person are being rescued. Why does everyone else got to die?
Right.
But even if it's a very specialized, because it's a prison ship, you only hit the beacon if it's taken over. That means it's time to blow it up. Why then they're okay, well now this beacon's on a random space station, but they happen to be launching a ship at the moment. Okay, nuke them. It did not make any sense whatsoever.
That's not where that goes. Blow it up. Blow the whole thing up.
And it was I like on my other podcast, Superhero Ethics, we're in a couple weeks going to be recording an episode about espionage and talking about one of my favorite TV shows, Burn Notice. And in that show, the hero is very good at getting other people to do his dirty work for him. And what the Mandalorian does is very much that kind of thing. It's you don't want to necessarily kill the people, but you frame them such that, when the big government types come rushing in, the guys you don't want to deal with get blown up and everything's okay. And so I thought that it was a fun dynamic to play with. It was just so... I wonder if this is the kind of thing where in a longer episode, they would have been able to explain it more and maybe even say this is sort of a sign of the New Republic doesn't really have its stuff together because it's doing dumb stuff like this. But as it was, it just seemed like it was so badly written.
Yeah, I mean, if you think too much on it, it starts to kind of come apart at the seams.
Yeah.
The idea of blowing up a prison ship, killing all the prisoners, regardless of who's actually the target or who's doing wrong, who's in charge, who's there, whatever, that's bad.
Yeah.
Then you think from the Mandalorian's perspective, the guy that he went so far back with and the prisoner that he rescued are not the only two people on that space station.
Yeah.
There are several people who had nothing to do with what was going on. Nothing involved.
This is the contractors on the second Death Star argument. I'm with you here.
Yeah. Roofers and plumbers and all that jazz. Yeah. So a lot of people died in the crossfire of this whole what was there? What conflict was there between the Mando and his old buddy? Did he want the bounty? Did he...
I mean, what we get told is that in some way, the Mandalorian turned his back on them, and that's what got the brother Quinn arrested in the first place. But why that? What clearly the Mandalorian didn't just chicken out. I think it's supposed to be that in some way they were doing something that violated his code. Again, I got, it makes me feel like they wrote this episode and kind of forgot that it was a half-hour series and kind of were thinking this was going to be a 50-minute, because it just seems like there's so much backstory that's just left on the table.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the episode, though, he says, one of our own got caught, and we're putting together a thing to spring him.
Right.
But if that's the case, the Mandalorian, as far as we understand it, has been gone for a while. So this is not like a recent development of the guy getting captured, of Quinn getting captured.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I had the sense that they worked together 5 years ago. Yeah. Especially because when he says one of our own got captured, the Mandalorian doesn't realize he's talking about Quinn, which tells me that Quinn's been in prison for quite some time.
Yeah.
I also liked the interplay between the robot, the droid, and Baby Yoda.
Zero.
Zero,
played by Richard Ayoade.
Who is that?
He's played by Richard Ayoade, who is Maurice Moss in the IT Crowd.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, and it's funny because that sort of insectile kind of persona, at first you think it's some kind of alien race, so it was fun that was a droid. And I liked his character. I mean, he reminded me a lot of the droid from Rogue One, who has no sense of tact, is perfectly fine saying, well, yes, I am more intelligent than you. I do have faster reflexes than you. But what I was still missing was, so why does he want to kill the child? I get that he sort of saw that there's a big bounty for the child, but wouldn't that still, the bounty is worth a lot more alive. Did you understand why he was deciding to shoot the child?
No. I mean, the hunter, the HK droid that was Taika Waititi droid in the first episode was just defaulting to kill the child as well.
That's also true.
Maybe the droids are just you know what? I'll take the lesser bounty if it's just easier to bring the shit in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And certainly I did, we've talked a couple episodes about how the child is developing all these force powers, and we don't want it to just be the child is the super wizard who can take care of everything. So I thought it was really fun that that moment when the child knows it's in danger, raises its hand to do some kind of force power, and then the head of the droid just blows up. And we realized later that this was Mando shooting the droid, but there's that wonderful moment of the child looking at its hand and kind of doing did I do that?
I can do that?
Yeah. So that was a fun little moment.
The child is just, Baby Yoda's just so damn adorable.
Yeah. No, it's
the whole series.
It's so funny too because maybe it's because it's so perfectly paired, but I feel like if you told me at the beginning of 2020 that we were going to get a TV show, or 2019, since that's when it happened, that we were going to get a TV show that was about a dark, grim portrait of the Star Wars universe in which a character never takes off his mask and is very cynical, and people shoot each other all the time and people betray each other, and it's a very grim, dark Star Wars world that also has the cutest creature to appear on a screen in the last 20 years. I would not have thought those two things would go together. But in some ways they feel kind of perfect. I feel like this much grim, dark world without Baby Yoda would be hard to take. And on the flip side, something as so clearly meant to manipulate the audience into cooing and oohing and ahhing as Baby Yoda is, in any other television show, I think would feel so overly saccharine. But it is just the perfect, it's that sort of thing where the main dish is so spicy that you can put something this sweet in it because it just kind of balances each other out.
Yep. That's kind of exactly it. It's the they're playing to extremes in almost every character on the show, and really almost every characterization on the show. Mm-hmm. But it's not. Excuse me. It's not it's not a caricature though of each normal trope. It's paying homage to each one.
Yeah.
And it's really doing each one justice, kind of in the way that things should look to this as the kind of the rule on, being an extreme or being the paragon of that one particular virtue or whatever.
Right.
And not going too far with it.
To me, it's the difference between having a character that fits within a trope, but is a very well fleshed out exploration of a particular version of that trope, is very different to me than cardboard cutout cliche who feels like, the damsel in distress who feels exactly the same as 20 other damsel in distresses from 20 other movies. None of these characters feel like cliches. They all feel tropes. They all feel like you can compare them to these other characters, but they still are very unique and distinct in really interesting ways.
I agree. I would also say that, the word trope gets thrown around a lot with a negative connotation, and that's not necessarily how it needs to be tossed around. Just because, geez, I'm so bad at taking care of my throat. Just because, something is similar to or inspired by something else doesn't necessarily mean it's just a carbon copy.
Right.
And, you can explore different things while still having a lot of things the same. It's what makes it familiar and a more, an easier in for that exploration.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I don't know that I necessarily like the connotation that goes along with trope, but I do understand where you're coming from.
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying, is I'm saying that, like, to me, what I think of as the bad version of a trope is a cliche. Whereas I'm saying, like, to fall within a trope, there's nothing wrong with that if you make it an interesting exploration of it. To say, like, I'm going to make another Tony Stark, that to me is boring. But to say, I'm going to make another troubled billionaire playboy who's actually, that's a perfect example. Like, you could say that Tony Stark and Bruce Wayne are very much the same trope, but they're very distinctly different versions of that character. Because, I don't think trope is a bad thing. I think relying on tropes can be a problem, or, like, if there's a particular trope that I think is overplayed and overdone, then I'm going to be critical of media that goes back to that well again. But, when's the last time we got a Western on television? I'm all for, like, give us some Western tropes. This is fun. Like, it's bringing back a lot of Firefly stuff, and we didn't get nearly enough Firefly. So
yeah, I was gonna say Firefly was pretty much the last Western we got.
Yeah,
and it was also a space Western.
Yeah, the sci-fi Western. Which I have to say, the more I look at the Mandalorian ship, does it look a little bit like Serenity to you?
It does.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm not the only one who's getting that feel.
It's not as, I don't think it's as big as Serenity.
Yeah.
Just because Serenity has so many different, chambers and compartments, and they did the huge walkthrough of the ship in the opening of the movie. It looks in this like the Razor Crest has, like, the cockpit and the bottom area.
Yeah,
that's about it.
It's much smaller, but it has a similar kind of feel, and it's very different, but it has a similar kind of feel to it. That just made me be like, I wonder if there's a little bit of an homage being paid there. It could be coincidence, but I'm not quite sure it was. Yeah. It was kind of a bottle episode. There was not a huge amount for us to talk about. Is there other? I want to maybe go into a spoiler section for the rest of the season, but is there any other things about this episode specifically you wanted to bring up?
No.
Okay.
No, let's go into it.
Well, then, for those of you who have not seen the rest of the season, this is a good time to tune out. Please remember, though, to check our show notes for more information about the Stranded Panda Network that this is a part of, and how to support us on Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, all those good places. For everyone else, we'll get spoilers about the rest of the season in 3, 2, 1. I don't really know what we learned that impacts the rest of the season.
Yeah, nothing. It is entirely self-contained.
Yeah. It's nice, though, because I think it's not serving a plot, but it does give us more of his backstory. It tells us more about him. Actually, something I could have just discussed during the main story, but maybe it's kind of about his character. Why do you think it is that he basically very happily gets, Mayfield and Bobby Elvis blown up, but he saves the life of the others? Like, he leaves them on the prison ship, but he
know.
doesn't kill them.
It's that betrayal thing. He, like we said, he has that backstory with them that we don't know about, where he betrayed them in some way, and like now it's the ultimate betrayal. He called the law on them. Right.
Well, but he doesn't get the like Xion, Quinn, and Berg. He doesn't kill them. He just leaves them on the prison ship, and they don't die. And yeah, I'm not sure if that's because he's just kind of feeling randomly merciful, or if maybe he feels like he owes them more of a debt, or that they weren't like as involved in like the plotting to kill him, or that they had better reason to want him dead. I have no idea, but I just thought that was it. It clearly seemed interesting that they wanted us to know that he had the chance to kill all the crew members. He didn't, but that he still got 2 of them killed, but not those other 3.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, at first it just seems really, really not necessarily cliche, but, going along with the trope of, it's kind of it's a Disney Plus show, so they didn't want to go too terribly dark.
Yeah.
But it is, it is a Western, so something has to happen to the bad guys, and they're on a prison ship, so it's,
yeah,
it makes sense that they would end up in jail in some way, or in one of the cells in some way. But, like, did he put them there, or did he just leave them there to get put in there?
Right. I mean, certainly that scene where he sneaks up on Mayfield and then attacks him out of the dark. I mean, I 100% thought Mayfield was dead at that point. So,
yeah.
It does make me wonder if part of what's happening is that this is just that they want to leave this door open to bring these characters back for something in season 2. That there's another team up job they have to go on, or they run into each other on opposite sides of a job or something like that, which I'd be up for. Like, there's certainly a lot more of this particular chapter of the story that we didn't learn, that I would love to get another, like, another go around to these characters and learn more about what their story is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really glad that they left Clancy Brown alive.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I'm concerned about, or the thing that I'm looking at with awe and reverence and wanting to dig in on, is in the Mandalorian's past, he ran thieving jobs, and he was a bad guy. He went along with this crew for what they said. He said target practice.
Right.
He said that's what he got out of it, and that's kind of dark. if you're just going along to be like, yeah, I'm just gonna shoot at stuff.
I mean, I guess
be people.
I don't know enough about the Mandalorian culture to know, is it considered that being a hired gun for any cause is a legitimate, this is the way? Or is, like, I'm finding it hard to think of, like, how being a bounty hunter is legitimate, but being, I mean, I guess a bounty hunter is officially not a criminal. You're going after criminals, whereas the, what's happening here is supposed to be more like legit, even more illegitimate. But yeah, that's another issue I would love to hear that more explored at some point. And we know we don't get it in season 1, but in season 2, like, it'd be great if he spent some more time with Mandalorians and like this comes up and they're like, either, well, yeah, you follow the way, you got to do the hard things, or they're really critical of him for, how could you run around with those criminals when you're supposed to be following the way? Because at this point, I just have no idea how that fits into being a Mandalorian.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't seem like he was bent up about it or bent out of shape about anything, but when it get brought up, he was definitely like, that was a different time in my life. I'm a different person now, and it's not necessarily the Mandalorian lifestyle, because he was already a Mandalorian at that point,
right?
But maybe he hadn't fully embraced it or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
like maybe he hadn't taken his final vow or whatever.
I will say the fact that all of the other characters, except the ones who already knew him, have clearly, like, never met a Mandalorian before, tells me that maybe it's not common for Mandalorians to be running around with, like, criminal gangs, because or else you'd think that some others would have done this before. But again, yeah, there's just a lot we don't know yet. So it's filling in some of these details. It's raising a lot more questions. It's not the heaviest plot episode, but it, like I said, it had enough. The heist storyline was interesting enough, and the characters were enough fun that I was perfectly happy to go along with the ride. This is a bottle episode I definitely did not mind.
Yeah, and I'm not mad at it at all. I would like to see what maybe what policies were put into place in the New Republic to determine that prisoners just need to be, mass executed anytime somebody rolls over on the button accidentally.
Yeah. I talk about this a lot, but one of the questions I'm always interested in is how much credit do we give the writers? And what I mean by that is situations where the writers are having a particular person or an organization do something stupid. And I don't know if it's bad writing or if it's because the writer is intentionally trying to tell us something about that institution. Because, at this time when the Republic is just getting started and a lot of people don't give it respect, and a lot of people don't even, bother having anything to do with it. And we know that in 20 years, the Republic is supposed to be so corrupt and so just weak that the First Order rises. Like, to tell us a story about the Republic being so overwhelmed and having no idea what to do with this criminal justice stuff, that they're just blowing up prisoners to try and settle issues. Like, that's a fascinating story. That tells me a lot.
Yeah.
Or if it's the writers really wanted to get some X-Wings in for a cool battle scene at the end and didn't think through the connotations of it, that's a very different story.
Yeah, that's that's bad writing.
Yeah.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. Well,
I haven't really seen that in this so far.
Excuse me, sir. You've watched Iron Fist. You've seen bad writing.
No, I haven't seen that in this series so far.
No, I agree. I mean, that's part of what's funny is that I think this is one of my favorite episodes of the show, but it also has like one of the worst plot points of the whole show.
It is one of the more troubling plot points, I would say.
Yeah, I think it's very true. Any last?
Did you hear?
Oh, go ahead.
Did you hear the news recently that Ming-Na Wen is going to be coming back for season 2?
No. Okay. So her character is not dead?
Yeah, she's not dead. Whoever picked her up off of the desert floor brought her back to life.
Okay.
Or
for anyone who's not good with actors' names, that's in the gunslinger. That's the bounty that they were after, who it seemed like the young gunslinger killed, but then was picked up toward the end. So yeah, that's
the next Shand.
Yeah, it does seem like there's a lot of little sort of threads from the season that weren't really pulled on. So it'd be fun to see if we're going to go back and do some of those. I was actually wondering, I saw that this show was scheduled to release October of this year. Do you know, have they already finished filming, or is this going to be another one of those shows that because of the pandemic, filming isn't happening, and so they may have to really delay the debut? Do you know?
I have not heard yet.
Okay.
I'll say I'm not hopeful.
Yeah.
Because the news that was coming out for it was it was very similar to like, hey, we just figured this out. Let's go ahead and announce it. And there was news that Ahsoka Tano was going to be in season 2, and that she was going to be played by
Rosario Dawson.
God, what's her name?
Rosario Dawson. Night Nurse.
Yeah, Night Nurse. I was like, Claire. It's Claire. Who's Claire? Claire. Who plays Claire?
So on the Bingers Assemble podcast that Matt Carroll and I are doing about Altered Carbon, the actress who plays Misty Knight from the Netflix Daredevil shows is on that, playing a character, and neither he nor I can ever remember her name, so we just constantly refer to her as Misty Knight. So yeah, we can call her Night Nurse in this, or Claire.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Because I do the same thing. I'm just like, she's holding that gun weird.
Yeah.
That's so different from her. Like, wait, she just punched that guy really hard. Shouldn't he have a hole in his chest? Oh, wait.
Different shows, different paradigms.
Right.
Certainly after watching Altered Carbon, the lack of blood and violence and everything else looks so weird to me.
Right? Man,
yeah.
Okay. So I just finished Altered Carbon season 2, I think last night.
Okay.
And I was reading a comic today. I was reading House of M, like number 3, I think. And there was a blood spatter, and I was just like, that's nothing. that doesn't look like anything.
Uh-huh.
You're fine, walk it off. But he had
Yeah.
like fallen off of a helicarrier into a skyscraper.
Oh God.
So like, it should have been real bad.
Yeah, standards change as you watch different things. Since we're pretty deep into tangent land, you about ready to wrap up, or is there any other last things you want to bring up?
No, I'm think I'm set for this one. I will say though, if we look at writing credits on chapter 6 of The Mandalorian versus the rest of the series, the people who are listed as having, one episode writing credit are all the people that are on this episode.
Oh yeah, that's pretty interesting. I would not have thought that's the case, but
Yeah, I mean, that might be disappointing, depending on how you feel about it.
I mean, it might also be why, I think this is something you guys learned with Marvel, and I have to remember too. I'm used to the thought of like someone who comes on to write for one of these franchises, it's because they, know the franchise inside and out the way the fans do, and they're excited to write about it. But sometimes you're just a professional writer who used to write on, Home Improvement or something, and you get hired to be the funny guy on a Star Trek show or something like that. So I do imagine that there are those moments where, something doesn't quite fit canon because the writer just didn't have the level of, I'm going to say, canonic knowledge. Someone else might say useless geeky trivia. Either way, like, there it goes. But like I said, we can headcanon any of it. Where in my mind, it's a sign of the deterioration of the New Republic. So there we go.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll say that.
Well,
I like that.
Fans, let us know what you think. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this and anything else we discussed in this episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, both at Star Wars Universe Podcast. And all that information is in the show notes. And of course, you can also email us or contact us any other way you want. I think a carrier pigeon might get to my new house if you can find my address. Well, I don't want to be inviting you to stalk me, so let's go away from that route. But any other electronic method you can do, go for it. We'll also say that both Jeff and myself are part of a number of other podcasts on the Stranded Panda Podcast Network. I've mentioned Superhero Ethics, and Jeff is on the MCU cast for Marvel, as well as both Jeff and I have done episodes on the Bingers Assemble Network. There's a lot of great podcasts to find there. If you like people taking media and diving pretty deep into it, great thing to check out all of those, especially if, you're either you're going to work every day because you're essential and we thank you for what you're doing, or you're staying at home and need some entertainment. Check out some of those podcasts. Jeff, thank you as always. Thank you to all of our listeners. Please let us know what you think and have a good day.
I've spoken.